Chadwick Boseman's legacy still feels larger than life, which is why the story of what happened after he died hits so hard. Despite earning millions through years of work and helping bring in over $1 billion to Marvel through Black Panther, court documents later revealed that he never created a formal will. The absence of that simple document meant his wife, Taylor, had to navigate months of legal procedures, and his parents were drawn into a complicated process that could have been avoided. What should have been peaceful, private grieving turned into a long and painful ordeal brought into public view, leaving behind a sadness that went deeper than lost money. It was the kind of struggle that never matched the dignity with which Boseman lived his life. He was born on November 29, 1976, in Anderson, South Carolina, the youngest of three, raised by his mother, Carolyn, a nurse, and his father, Leroy, who worked grueling hours repairing furniture in the family home before eventually building a small upholstery business. Their house was modest, but it pulsed with a sense of purpose. Chadwick absorbed that work ethic early. He watched his father build things from scraps, including a small playhouse in their yard, and the sight of it stirred something creative inside him. For a time he wanted to become an architect, drawing cities and designing imaginary houses, studying how objects fit together and how structure created meaning. Even after he eventually turned to the arts, that builder's mindset stayed with him. He shaped characters the way his father once shaped wood and leather. As a child, he trained in martial arts, karate, taekwondo, anything that demanded discipline. The controlled movements, the rhythm, the focus became part of his physical vocabulary, and decades later, those early lessons would echo in the sharp, elegant movement that audiences saw on screen. Black Panther wasn't an accident of casting. It was the product of decades of work, sweat, humility, and intention. His ancestry, which DNA testing would later show traced back to regions including Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and Guinea-Bissau, became a quiet point of pride for him. It wasn't just heritage, it was history. When he eventually brought T'Challa to life, he insisted the character's language and presence honor real African cultures, rather than a fictional pastiche. Even long before Marvel entered his life, he carried a sense of responsibility toward the stories his ancestors never got to tell. Growing up in the South in the 1980s meant growing up with the residue of the civil rights era still hanging in the air. Anderson carried its own divisions, its unspoken boundaries, its uncomfortable truths. Chadwick saw racism, felt it, and listened to his parents talk about it openly. Those conversations shaped him. They fueled the roles he later chose. Jackie Robinson, Thurgood Marshall, figures whose lives demanded a voice filled with both strength and restraint. In high school, he found that voice on the debate team, where he competed nationally, placing in the top ranks for original oratory. His speeches carried the weight of his family's stories and the country's unfinished battles. He played basketball too, fast and thoughtful on the court, until tragedy struck when a close teammate was killed in a drive-by shooting. The grief pushed him away from sports and into writing. His first play, Crossroads, emerged from that loss, performed at his school and remembered for its honesty. Even at 17, he understood that art could transform pain into something that could lift people up. To pursue college, he worked for his father, restoring car seats for $5 an hour to pay application fees. He got into Howard University in 1995 with a partial scholarship and entered its competitive directing program. At Howard, he pushed himself relentlessly, studying long hours, holding down part-time jobs, and working late nights in rehearsal rooms. He studied design, lighting, and staging. He went to Oxford for a summer program, learned from masters, and convinced mentors that he possessed not just talent but vision. After graduating, he faced years of struggle, debts, rejections, small apartments, odd jobs, auditions that went nowhere, projects that stalled or were never produced. He wrote plays, directed, interned, swept floors at the Apollo Theater, and kept learning. He refused to let anyone put him in a box. His break came slowly, through TV roles that demanded depth even when the screen time was small. Then came 42, where he transformed into Jackie Robinson, training for hours to make every movement look true. He met Robinson's widow, Rachel, and used her stories to build a character filled with silent strength. In one emotionally explosive scene, he filmed more than 30 takes until he delivered the raw truth the moment needed. After 42, he turned down dozens of repetitive offers, choosing depth over convenience. He pushed himself again for Get On Up, channeling James Brown with months of dance and vocal work. For Marshall, he studied records and court transcripts. With every role he dug deeper, refused shortcuts, and fought to honor the real people he portrayed. The world didn't know that, beginning in 2016, he was doing all of this while battling colon cancer. Through surgeries, treatments, and agonizing pain, he kept filming superhero blockbusters, historical dramas, war stories, and finally the searing performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. On some days he worked right after medical procedures. He never made it anyone else's burden. Marvel cast him as T'Challa without asking for an audition, and from the start he helped shape the world of Wakanda. He insisted on real languages, real cultural grounding, real depth. He infused the role with spirituality, discipline, and ancestral pride. Even when injuries struck him during filming, he kept going. When the Wakandan army needed a battle cry in Infinity War, he invented one on the spot. The crew followed him. Extras roared back. It became one of the most iconic moments in the entire MCU. Despite the film's massive success, Boseman stayed humble. He donated large sums quietly and supported the Boys and Girls Club in his hometown. His love story with Taylor Simone Ledward unfolded privately, away from cameras. They married quietly in 2019, sharing a life built on music, respect, and mutual grounding, even as his health worsened. The world only learned he was sick on August 28, 2020, when the announcement of his death spread across the globe. He had shielded everyone, even colleagues, from the hardest truth of his life. The grief that followed was immense. Tributes, murals, candlelight vigils, children saluting him in small Black Panther costumes. It felt like the world had lost not just an actor, but a guiding spirit. Later, when court records revealed he had not left a will, people were reminded that even the strongest among us can leave things unfinished. The legal process was long and costly, something no family should have had to endure in the middle of heartbreak. Yet his legacy continued to grow. He received a posthumous Emmy for his voice work, and Howard University renamed its College of Fine Arts in his honor with support from major donors. In 2025, his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame was unveiled as his wife stood quietly beside it, tears in her eyes, surrounded by memories of a man whose impact had reached far beyond the screen.